Hello, everybody, and welcome to August, and welcome to the first business spotlight in August. And we've got Steve from Composite Braiding Ltd. It's a very interesting company, a very interesting chap. So, Steve, tell us all about your business.
Hi there, Tim. Thanks for the invite. Composite Braiding, we're based in Derby. We're an SME manufacturer. We're in the composite manufacturing sector. So, just to put in plain English what that is, composites are things like carbon fiber, glass fiber, but we use thermoplastic matrices, things like polypropylene, nylon, PET, the sort of stuff that you pretty much use every day. However, we don't make everyday things. So we are making parts for transportation, for infrastructure, for sports, and we're doing it at much higher volume and also with much lower cost because there's a lot of automation, but also very, very sustainably.
Absolutely fantastic. So, just tell us a bit more where this is actually used.
So, if I take, for example, something we've done recently with Amy, so this is public information. We did something called a twin track cantilever, which is a structure that's used on the railways, and they hold the high voltage lines in place. So you'll have seen them when you're going on your trains. It's like an inverted L, about 8 meters tall, 4.5 meters wide. And they hold the 25,000 volt lines. In that case, two of them. That's the twin track bit of it. And they're currently installing these up in the Transpennine upgrade. They currently are made of imported steel and they weigh over 1,700 kilos. So we came up with a design that would meet all of the requirements of the current structures, but the one that we made is 277 kilos and is made here in the UK. And actually, 60 kilos of that was some steel feet. So we are able to really take out a lot of weight, which helps with installation, makes it a lot cheaper to put into place, and it's about the same cost roughly as the steel one, but also reduces the carbon footprint by over 80%. So there's lots of advantages to what we're doing, just as an example of the sort of things that we're doing.
Absolutely fantastic. And this is in Derby.
This is in Derby, yeah.
Guys, these sort of stories are absolutely wonderful. So, how did he start this business? I mean,
So my background, I was in Rolls-Royce for 19 years. My last two jobs were customer business director, looked after sales, commercial, customer support for a lot of Europe. Then I was head of marketing, part of the team that got the Trent 1000 selected on the 787. But I wasn't seeing my family growing up. So I decided to have a bit of a career change, and I basically had a friend of mine was the ops director at a composites company. One of the bits of that composite company needed some help. It wasn't doing so well, and it was running a composite operation. And I was ideal for the job apart from two things. One, I'd never worked in composites and didn't know what they were particularly, and secondly, I'd never run an operation. But apart from those two things, I was completely ideal for it, obviously. But now 21 years later, and I'm now on the board of Composites UK, the trade association, and understand the market pretty well. So yeah, that's a bit of background as to me and how I ended up working in composites, at least anyway.
but now, what have you seen change over the years in the industry?
So it's gone from being very bespoke, complex manufacturing, so things like supercars and very specific aircraft components, to becoming far more mass market. So once upon a time, people were telling me confidently that composites wouldn't make their way into mass market vehicles. That's no longer the case. It is finding itself into some very high volumes. I mean, our process is capable of making hundreds of thousands of parts a year. So it's gone from being a very labor intensive, expensive type of product, and you can still get those, but to the point whereby there's also processors out there that can look at high volume.
That's really so. Therefore, and that will actually bring all the benefits you were actually talking about with the Amy stuff that you actually have just literally put up. So, the actual market itself is expanding for composites.
It is. I mean, a lot of what happens in the composites industry is a key enabler for net zero. So whilst net zero, for because of obviously some of the things that are going on geopolitically, is perhaps having less of a focus in certain geographic areas, the reality is that a lot of people, whilst they're de-emphasizing it, still see it as being absolutely vital to actually delivering a much lower carbon economy. And composites are a big, big help in terms of delivering that. So the example I gave with over 80% reduction in CO2 emissions, I've got plenty of other ones where the savings. There's another thing we've just done for a major logistics company. And if they adopt a particular product, they themselves in 1 year, each year, would save over 70,000 tons of CO2 equivalent each year. It's a very big operation, but there's some huge numbers involved in this.
That's absolutely amazing. And sort of, why don't we hear about this?
Basically, I would say UK manufacturing is not the flavor of the month generally. You have a look at AI-based businesses. There's tons of funding available for them, lots of focus, and quite rightly, there's very exciting things happening in the world of AI. And I'm not in any way bemoaning that. We're using some AI ourselves. But in reality, a lot of people don't understand that we still have a very vibrant manufacturing sector. And actually, what we need to do is to have more of a focus on manufacturing because we generate a lot of very good high value jobs and generate a lot of value add to the UK economy, which will help to pay for the hospitals, for the education, for the all the things that we as an economy need, the growth basically. Thankfully, the government's brought out the industrial strategy recently. We'd like to build on that and really have more of a focus on manufacturing alongside all the other bits of the economy. I'm not suggesting for a second it should only be manufacturing. It should be part of a mixed economy. But certainly, I agree. We ought to have more focus on manufacturing.
I think you made a very good, interesting point there, whereas people actually think of manufacturing as, I mean, some of it still is, but it's going and has gone far more into the technological. It's highly skilled, needing a lot of brain power, etc. It's not a case of just bashing a load of metal anymore, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, people, have old-fashioned ideas about it being, very dirty and, as you say, metal bashing. In reality, yeah, whilst we do use some metal alongside the composites that we make, the reality is we've got a very clean factory. And in terms of the technology we've developed, we are genuinely world leading. We've won 2 global awards, 3 national, two regional, and there's some more on the way. Yeah, we are absolutely world leading in terms of what we're doing.
Brilliant, absolutely. So, what do you see as the main challenges going forward?
I'd say if I have a look at manufacturing in general, and then I'll bring it down to the company. From a manufacturing perspective, it's access to finance. It's just not the flavor of the month. Hopefully, the industrial strategy, what the British Business Bank is going to be doing, will help that. We've got a very capable finance sector, but I would suggest not a lot of that sector really understand manufacturing particularly well. We're not flavor of the month because not a lot of people understand what it is necessarily that we do. Plus, also, the returns that you get from manufacturing tend to be lower than you can potentially get from a technology company. However, they're likely to be more reliable and actually more repeatable, and we generate a lot more jobs. So that's on a macro level. On a company level, I would say it's more going to be more down to again access to that particular finance, but it'll then be looking for actually finding the right people for the jobs. Because again, we've got very highly skilled jobs that we need. I very much recruit for the team. That's very, very important. We've got a very good culture here, and I want to maintain that. So finding the right people for the jobs will be something which we'll have to manage as we go forward.
Yeah, that's a very interesting share again. And I think that'll resonate with an awful lot of people. So, what do you actually attribute your growth to?
Basically, having basically identifying and then fixing a gap in the market. So if I go back about, oh gosh, 17 years ago, I was running composite businesses. And the automotive industry came to the composites industry and said, we need to save weight because we want to save CO2. Now, at that time, they weren't particularly thinking so much about saving the planet. It was more about saving their balance sheets from massive fines. So but we as a composites industry had to turn around and say, well, look, we'd love to, but we can't hit your volumes, we can't hit your costs. So that was a massive gap in the market. So and I'm sure lots of others were looking around at how do you close that gap? It's a massive opportunity, but what do you do? In one of the turnarounds I was involved in, I was asked by a PLC to go have a look at a business, and they had some braiding, but I had an epiphany when I saw the braiding. So I thought if you put some other elements together, you actually had part of the answer to how do I do high volume, lower cost structural components. And anyway, it was basically thinking through that gap. How do I fill that gap? And then coming up with a technology. So what I did was ended up setting up this business, and myself and the technical director put together a technology roadmap. So we went to potential end customers and said, if I can do X, what is X that you'd want to go and buy? And secondly, we also figured out that that's fine. So that's something called technology readiness level, TRL. So that helps us to define some of the technologies we needed to develop. But we also needed to be able to manufacture them at rate. So if you remember, I'm talking about not just low cost, but also higher volume. How do I do that? So therefore, we needed to work on the manufacturing readiness level, the MRL. So we needed both of those hand in hand. So it wasn't just a case of let's go make some lightweight super stuff. It's how do we go make lightweight super stuff, but at volume and at cost. So that was really the exam question. So that was why we get the growth that we do, because effectively we found a market gap, a need, and went and spoke to some of the end customers and tried to fill out what that need was, and come up with a solution to that need.
That's a really great share because behind all that is okay, it's the idea, talking to customers, etc. But you had a plan.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I basically I sat down initially when I thought about the company. I wrote out a business plan. Interestingly, I've written lots of business plans over the years, and when I started on this one, as many years ago, I actually ended up going to the funding circle, not to actually go and get any money from them, but actually I quite liked their at that time structure of their business plans just as headlines. And I ended up using that as headlines. I did all the detail myself, but at least I made sure I had each of the different elements that I wanted to have in place for the business actually spelled out, and then started testing some of those in the marketplace and with other people who I knew very well for them to go challenge me on various different bits so that I could really put together the first part of a coherent business case and business plan. And then over the intervening period, relatively quickly, I then managed to boil that down to a one pager to try and make it a lot more useful, so that I could explain it to people a bit better than rather than having a 30, 40 page thing, which I needed to have in order to have thought through a lot of the points. So that I could then boil it down to one page and actually make it applicable and accessible to everyone who's going to be involved with the business.
Brilliant! What a great story! What a great share! I think that's a real learning for everybody. Yeah, you can write a Bible, but you actually need to actually distill it so actually everybody can actually own it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Again, a lot of people in the past, when I've seen business plans, they've raised them. That's fantastic, but then it's something that's got a tick box, then holds up a table, stops it wobbling, and it's a completely useless exercise. And equally, I would say, in terms of the business plan, it's something you need to go back to regularly to go test some of the ideas or get the new inputs again, because we've all done the SWOT analysis. Actually, it's a pretty powerful tool.
Yeah,
It's simple. It's not complex to use. Most people will be aware of it. But equally, with the way the world is changing at the moment, actually, there's some real opportunities and threats out there, which again raise their head, and it's the sort of thing that you need to be aware of and thinking through. So it needs to be a very much a living document as opposed to a diatribe that's raised and as I say stops the table from wobbling, and you do perhaps once a year if you're lucky.
that's great advice. Thank you for sharing that, Steve. The final question. What's the best advice you give to an 18-year-old you?
Not to think that my haircut at that time was trendy. Um, I would say probably in terms of where you're seeing your career, go and do something that you think you're going to enjoy. If you enjoy it, you're likely to be good at it. If you're good at it, you're likely to find that the rewards will follow. And by rewards, I don't just mean money. You know, it's important to have a good work-life balance. It's important to have happiness. It's important. A lot of things are important. I've never chased money personally. I've seen people who have, and some are happy and many aren't. So it's really trying to find your way through your career, having that balance between all the various things that you think are important, and they will change as you get older as well. Because again, you might be very career minded perhaps in your 20s because you need to be. You've got no idea really how good you are, and you need to impress people with what you can do. Trust me, as you get older, you kind of get to the sense of where I've done a lot of that. That's not really my focus at all. I've got a different focus. So you might be married, you might have a family, you might have all other interests, whatever it is that you do, and however your life is structured, things will change. Your viewpoint will change over the whole of your life, and it's just being honest to that. Not try and be an industrial hero. Too many people try that. Frankly, the world will not stop turning because Steve Barber's not here. Trust me. Uh, but just try and make a positive difference.
Brilliant. What a wonderful way to end the interview. Steve, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate it.